Hello, my name is Shane Byer. I'm the Assistant State Inspector for Work Health with SafeWork New South Wales. Welcome to today's session on protecting your outdoor workers from UV radiation, whatever the weather.
And I'm Ali Hamer. I'm a Senior Project Coordinator in the Skin Cancer Prevention Unit at Cancer Council New South Wales.
In this webinar, we will explain what UV radiation is in simple terms and how it is the main cause of skin cancer in Australia. We'll also show you how high the UV levels are across Australia. Then we'll talk about the different types of skin cancer, how they develop and the incident rates in Australia, and then discuss how UV and sun exposure risk can be controlled using the risk management process. At the end of this webinar, there will be a short quiz to test your knowledge on the information we've presented today. It's important to know that as well as UV radiation, working outdoors can expose workers to extreme heat, which can result in heat-related illness and cause severe health problems, even death. Heat-related illness occurs when the body's normal sweating response can't cool the body down enough to maintain a healthy temperature. It's an umbrella term because there are stages to the illness, and workers can be exposed to it whether they're working indoors or outdoors. Exposure to UV radiation and heat-related illness are separate hazards for outdoor workers. In this webinar, we're only focusing on controlling your outdoor workers' exposure to UV radiation. If you want more information on how to prevent heat-related illness, head to the SafeWork website or check out the links we've included in this webinar. So let's start explaining what UV radiation is. The sun produces lots of different types of energy, and ultraviolet radiation, also known as UV and UVR, is just one of them. This is the electromagnetic spectrum, which is used to describe the entire range of solar-produced energy. On the left is infrared. It's invisible, however we can feel its heat effects. In the middle are the visible range of wavelengths. It's the light and the brightness that we can see with our eyes. Then there is UV radiation, which is also invisible, but unlike heat, we can't feel UV's effect. This means that UV radiation isn't related to temperature because our senses can't detect it. We don't notice the damage it's doing to our skin when it's happening. The behaviour of each type of radiation energy is classified according to its frequency or wavelength, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. The shorter the wavelength, or the closer together they are, means the more dangerous they are to us humans. Solar UV has shorter wavelengths, as does X-rays and gamma rays, which are not produced by the sun. These three types of radiation are known as ionising radiation, which means they can cause damage to living tissue. This means that UV is the most dangerous type of energy that's produced by the sun.
It's really important to understand that UV radiation from the sun is a known carcinogen, and it's in the same category as tobacco and asbestos. Over 95% of skin cancers are caused by exposure to solar UV radiation. So workers who spend all or even part of their day outdoors have a significantly higher risk of developing skin cancer. All skin types can be damaged by UV, and the damage caused by UV is permanent and irreversible, and it increases with each exposure. UV is present during daylight hours all year round, and exposure to it isn't only limited to days with sunny, clear blue skies or to the summer months. UV is present whether the sky is clear, a little bit cloudy or overcast. It starts at daybreak and increases its intensity as the morning progresses, peaks in the middle of the day, and then it lessens in intensity until the sun sets. Solar UV radiation can reach a person from the ground from three sources. So directly from the sun and scattered or reflected by the atmosphere from clouds in the sky, the ground, water and other materials as well. So this means that even if a person is shaded from the direct sun, they can still be exposed to UV radiation from other sources. The severity of exposure to UV depends on a range of personal and environmental factors. Whether these personal and environmental factors occur independently of each other or in a combination, they all can affect how much UV exposure someone experiences and increase their risk. The environmental influencing factors that contribute to a person's exposure to UV include the time of day, the time of year, the altitude at which work is being done, the availability of shade, and whether there are any reflective surfaces nearby. The personal influencing factors that can contribute to a person having an increased risk of developing skin cancer include that it's more common to develop skin cancer as you age. However, fair skin with freckles and moles that burns easily and doesn't tan, with blue or green eyes, and fair or red hair significantly increase the risk. However, it's important to remember that all skin types can be damaged by UV. The amount of exposure that you've had during childhood and the amount of ongoing exposure in adulthood, if the worker has had a history of sunburn, and the amount of outdoor work and outdoor leisure activities they do. The risk is also increased if you've already had a skin cancer or a keratosis, which is a common precancerous skin condition. How do we measure UV? That's where the UV index comes into play. The UV index is an international standard measurement of the strength of solar UV radiation and is commonly used to advise us of the times when sun protection is needed for most Australians. The higher the number, the stronger the UV rays. We should all know that when the UV levels are 3 and above, UV or sun protection is needed. That's because a UV level of 3 is strong enough to damage unprotected skin and eyes. You can see only levels 1 and 2 are green, so anything yellow and above indicates damaging UV levels. But for those of us who work outdoors, even a small amount of UV can be damaging as they are exposed to so much UV, and the damage, as we've mentioned already, is cumulative, meaning it increases with each exposure.
Here's why UV protection is a priority. Australia experiences some of the highest levels of UV in the world. This means that UV levels of 3 and above are not rare events across New South Wales. We're exposed to the UV levels well above 3 all year round, except for a few days in June and July in the southern parts of New South Wales. This image shows the solar UV levels at noon on a clear sky day, averaged across 12 months of the year. You'll note that no part of Australia averages 1 to 2, it's all 3 and above. In summer, it's extreme levels, 11 to 12 across New South Wales, except for a tiny pocket on the southeast corner that's averaging still an extreme 10. These graphs clearly demonstrate that every outdoor worker's exposure to UV radiation must be managed every working day throughout the entire year, whatever the weather. It's not a slim chance that they'll be exposed, they will be, it's a fact.
To add to Shane's message, this graph shows that the time to skin damage varies with UV level. During summer, the UV index value may be 12 for a typical clear sky day around solar noon. The time it takes for an individual with underprotected fair skin to get damaged is approximately 11 minutes. When the UV level is 3, it will take about 44 minutes to burn. But can I draw your attention to UV levels 1 and 2? We've been talking about how UV levels of 3 and above will damage unprotected skin and eyes. But you can see that UV levels 1 and 2 can also damage our skin, it just takes longer. It's like exposure to hazardous noise. The damage being done depends on the intensity of the exposure and the length of time you are exposed. And as Shane said earlier, UV levels of 1 and 2 commonly occur in the early morning and late evening, as well as on a few days in June and July in the southern regions of New South Wales. Our skin is the largest organ in our body. It is made up of 2 main layers, the epidermis and the dermis. Skin cancers develop on the outer layer of the skin. This layer is called the epidermis. The epidermis contains 3 different types of cells: basal cells, squamous cells, and melanocytes. The skin cancer is named after the cell it originates from, meaning there are 3 types of skin cancer. Basal cell carcinomas, also known as BCCs. These are the most common type of skin cancer, but the least dangerous. Over half of all BCs grow on the face and neck. They are slow growing over months and years and can affect nearby skin tissue if left untreated. Squamous cell carcinomas, which I will refer to as SCCs, are less common but more dangerous than BCCs. They are most commonly found on the head and neck and can also spread to other organs if it's left untreated. BCCs and SCCs are often grouped together and called non-melanoma skin cancers. Outdoor workers, both full-time and part-time, have a higher than average risk of BCCs and SCCs because they spend long periods of time working in the sun all year round over many years of working life. While BCCs and SCCs are classified as least dangerous and less dangerous, they are still dangerous. Every year there are around 250 deaths in New South Wales recorded for these non-melanoma skin cancers and approximately 700 nationally. Then we get to the melanomas, which are the least common but by far the most dangerous skin cancer. They usually start as a new spot, freckle or mole in the skin that changes in colour, thickness or shape. They can spread to internal organs and can become deadly in just a matter of months if they're not detected or removed promptly. Most skin cancer deaths are attributed to melanoma. Approximately 1,500 Australians will die from it every year. As you can see, Australia and New Zealand have the highest rates of melanoma in the world by far, with almost double the incidence experienced than in Western Europe in second place. It's also projected that incidence rates in Australia will continue to increase. Our high rates are largely due to factors such as our predominantly fair-skinned populations, geographical position to the sun, and the high proportion of clear sky days that we receive. The earlier skin cancer is identified and treated, the better the chances of recovering and avoiding further surgery. The key point to remember is that when we protect our skin from UV, we reduce our risk.
We're now going to show you some photos of people taken with a normal camera and also with a UV light camera at the same time. This photo of a young woman taken with the normal camera shows her skin looking clear and undamaged. Now with the UV light camera, it's scary to see the amount of skin damage that UV has already done to her face.
Cancer Institute New South Wales research has identified that in New South Wales, men aged 40 and above are at the highest risk of developing skin cancer. And that's because they're more likely to work outside, they experience higher levels of recreational UV or sun exposure than women, and compared to women of the same age, men in New South Wales aged 40 and above are more than 1.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with melanoma and 2.5 times more likely to die from it. It was also identified that for men aged 40 and above, that wearing sunglasses is their most common sun protection behaviour, while using sunscreen is their least common behaviour. SafeWork Australia conducted an Australian workplace exposure study in May 2016 to examine carcinogens in the construction and agriculture industries. It found that workers in each industry did not adequately protect themselves. In the construction industry, 86% of workers were exposed, but just 7% used suitable personal protective equipment and were considered adequately protected. In agriculture, 99% of workers were exposed, yet only 10% used suitable PPE.
In New South Wales, in the 10-year financial period 2006-7 to 2015-16, a total of 903 workers' comp claims were lodged for skin cancer. Of that total, 693 claims, 77% were accepted. That's over 3/4 of the total claims. And the gross incurred cost of these accepted claims was well over $12 million. Successful skin cancer compensation claims clearly demonstrate that the employer could have prevented the workers' skin cancer from occurring had they implemented the necessary control measures. 880 of the claims were lodged by men, the remaining 23 by women. The main occupations were labourers, truck drivers, mobile plant operators, paving and surfacing workers, and garden and nursery workers. The work health and safety legislation spells out the health and safety duties for everyone in the workplace, and all New South Wales businesses must comply with it. It's the law. Employers and PCBUs have the primary duty of care to ensure the health and safety of their workers and others in the workplace. And workers must contribute by taking reasonable care for their own and others' health and safety and cooperating with the PCBU's efforts to make the workplace safe by following policies and procedures, wearing the required PPE and attending any work health and safety training. The work health and safety legislation is based on risk management, which is a planned, systematic and proactive process that helps businesses to continuously improve. The risk management framework must be used to manage all reasonably foreseeable hazards and their associated risks in your workplace. And as we've just learnt, exposure to UV radiation is a foreseeable hazard for outdoor workers. Central to its success is management commitment, and you must consult with your workers at every stage of the process. There are 4 steps. Identify hazards, you find out what could cause the harm. You assess the risks if it's necessary. We say if necessary because many hazards and their associated risks are well known. and they have well-known accepted control measures. For example, the recommended protective measures against exposure to UV are suitable for all individuals. So formally assessing the risks in these situations is unnecessary. In situations involving more complex risks, for example, the risk of exposure to heat-related illness, the hazards or the influencing factors can be different for different people. There's no recommended one-size-fits-all controls and therefore should be assessed. After assessing the risk, you control the risk using the hierarchy of controls. You implement the most effective control measure that's reasonably practicable in the circumstances. And then the last step is to review the control measures to ensure that they're working as planned. The aim is to stop UV radiation from reaching and penetrating unprotected skin. To achieve this, PCBUs should develop a comprehensive UV and sun protection program in consultation with their workers and/or their health and safety representatives. Because when everyone's involved, then everyone has ownership and knows what's expected of them. A UV sun protection program includes developing a workplace UV sun protection policy, planning and implementing effective control measures, and providing information, instruction and training for workers about UV, its risks and how to work safely outdoors, and monitoring and regularly reviewing the program's effectiveness. The hierarchy of control measures must be followed when controlling any work health and safety risk. It ranks the methods of controlling risk from the highest level of protection and reliability to the lowest, and it must be worked through from top to bottom. The Code of Practice Managing Health and Safety Risks provides helpful guidance to assist you to understand and use risk management and the hierarchy of controls in your workplace. Using the hierarchy of controls, eliminating the risk of exposure to UV can be done for some outdoor work in the planning stages of a job. For example, in construction, precast slabs and panels and trusses can be made and assembled at the factory instead of on site by outdoor workers. You could use drones or other technology to avoid the need for workers to monitor agriculture or crops, livestock, fences and dams. However, elimination of UV radiation isn't reasonably practical for most outdoor work, and you can't isolate it or substitute it either. So PCBUs will need to use a combination of the engineering, administrative and PPE controls to manage UV exposure risks. Engineering controls can be used to provide shade, such as erecting permanent shade structures, for example in the hospitality and education industry sectors, providing temporary shade structures, installing shade structures to mobile vehicles, providing an air-conditioned indoor area or a site shed for rest breaks, and also applying window tinting to work vehicles. PCBUs must also consider how to modify reflective surfaces. For example, repaint white exterior walls in permanent outdoor workplaces. While admin controls and PPE are the least effective controls on the hierarchy because they don't remove any hazards or risks, and compliance depends on each individual worker's knowledge and behaviour, they are integral when managing UV exposure risks. SafeWork New South Wales considers the SunSmart app is a really useful tool for everyone to use. We recommend outdoor workplaces use it to assist with planning and implementing their safe systems of work. We also encourage you to download it, use it yourselves and promote it with your work colleagues and your family and friends.
The SunSmart app, developed by Cancer Council, focuses on the sun protection times for each day based on the UV levels reaching 3 and above. The Cancer Council SunSmart app has a function that allows you to calculate how much sunscreen to use, taking into account a person's size and amount of skin exposed, and also gives 2 hourly reminders to reapply sunscreen. The app can also be set to the location in New South Wales where the work is being done.
Using this app to know the UV forecast for each day will assist you with managing workplace exposure, so including suitable work systems to monitor the forecast sun protection times daily for the outdoor workplace location to identify the time frame UV levels will be 3 and above. Designate a person or persons responsible for monitoring UV radiation levels daily and clearly communicating the information to workers via an agreed method, so it's easily understood by all the staff, including when to reapply sunscreen. Plan or reschedule work routines so outdoor work activities are done outside these times. For example, tasks can be done indoors or in shaded areas during the times of the day when the UV radiation levels are 3 and above. You can rotate outdoor workers regularly so that they're exposed less during the peak UV times. And PPE must always be worn and used by outdoor workers to stop UV reaching their unprotected skin. It's important to remember that PPE is only effective when it's worn, used, maintained and stored correctly. And when selecting PPE, PCBUs must always consider whether it could cause other safety issues. For example, loose shirts may pose a danger if worn near certain power tools. It starts with UV sun protective clothing, which acts as a barrier, which can't be wiped off or washed off. Clothing items must have an ultraviolet protection factor, or UPF, of 50+, and they must comply with the Australian Government Sun Protection Rating. You'll know the clothing complies if this swing tag featuring the Sun Protection Certification trademark is attached. UPF 50+ clothing blocks out 98% of the sun's rays. The shirts are long-sleeved and have a collar, and they're worn with long trousers. A wide-brimmed sun protective hat also made from UPF 50 material that shades the face, head, nose, ears and neck, which, as we mentioned earlier, are the most common areas for skin cancers to develop. The hat must be either a broad-brimmed bucket or Legionnaire style hat. Baseball caps are not sun-safe hats. And hard hats should be fitted with detachable brims and neck flaps. Workers should also wear sunglasses that are a close-fitting wraparound style and have an eye protection factor, or EPF, of 9 or 10. Then, to protect any unprotected skin, a broad-spectrum water-resistant sunscreen with a sun protection factor, or SPF, of 50+ must be provided and used regularly. Sunscreen doesn't actually block out UV radiation, it only filters it, which is why it needs to be reapplied regularly.
Every time we apply sunscreen, we should use about 7 teaspoons to cover our whole body. 1 teaspoon for each leg, 1 teaspoon for each arm, 1 for your back and 1 for your front. 1 teaspoon for your face and neck, and make sure it's applied all over your face, including your ears. It's vitally important that sunscreen is applied properly and to all necessary face and body areas, and that enough sunscreen is used. The lady is applying sunscreen on her face correctly. You can see the cream being rubbed in. This lady was also asked to apply sunscreen. Sadly, many of us apply sunscreen like this, thinking it's enough. But the huge difference in her level of UV protection is clear and obvious.
Always follow the instructions on the label. Sunscreen should be applied generously about 20 minutes before going outdoors so that it can be absorbed, and then reapplied every 2 hours at a minimum afterwards. The expiry date on the bottle should also be regularly checked and adhered to. And you must ensure all outdoor workers are provided with appropriate and regular training and instruction in the combination of UV controls being used in your workplace, and also ensure UV safety messages are communicated to workers regularly.
As Shane said, a workplace sun protection policy is a great way to start. It can be standalone or included with your main work health and safety policy. It should document all elements of the UV protection program, detail your commitment to require the use of sun protection measures in the workplace, and state how you're going to achieve it. This sun protection policy template will help you to get started. It was developed by Cancer Council along with some other useful resources like a sun safety risk assessment template for outdoor work, a toolbox talk template about skin cancer prevention, and you can download these tools from our Cancer Council New South Wales website for free. When you think about it, protecting outdoor workers from exposure to UV at work is basically doing what we all know we should be doing when we're outdoors. And this is slip on clothing that covers as much skin as possible, slop on SPF 50 sunscreen, slap on a broad-brimmed hat, seek out shade wherever you can, and slide on wraparound sunglasses.
Thank you for joining us today. I will now run through some key takeaways from this session. Remember, solar UV radiation is present every day, whatever the weather, whether it's sunny, cloudy or overcast. New South Wales is regularly exposed to UV levels well over 3 for most of the year. Solar UV radiation causes 95% of all skin cancers in Australia. Australia and New Zealand have the highest melanoma rate in the world. PCBUs must protect outdoor workers from exposure to UV radiation every day using a combination of controls, whatever the weather. The key aim for every workplace is to stop UV radiation from reaching and penetrating all outdoor workers' unprotected skin.